Thanks for joining, everybody. This is a critical gathering. We've got a strong group of Democratic members of Congress here tonight. And before I turn things over to our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, I'd love to say a couple words. Last night, every Republican got out of their seats and gave a standing ovation for skyrocketing costs, for economic freefall, and the next American recession brought to you by Donald Trump and Elon Musk. I dare every single one of these Republicans who blindly applauded for Trump to go home and meet their voters face to face. But they won't, because Republicans know that kicking kids off health care to pay for billionaire tax handouts has made their constituents furious. They know that firing our veterans is a bad look. They know that attacking Social Security will cost them their jobs. Look, Donald Trump mentioned Joe Biden 13 times last night. He sure didn't talk about the economy that many times, other than to admit that people are going to hurt because of his economic policies. And you know how many times he mentioned health care? Zero. After only 6 weeks on the job, Donald Trump is on the ropes. His economic approval rating is tanking, consumer confidence is down, and prices are up. But he's the gaslighter in chief. We know he doesn't speak from a place of reality. Everybody on this call is working hard to hold Trump and the Republicans to account. And I'm working nonstop to win elections, including elections that are happening right now and throughout 2025, because that's how we can send a real message to Republicans. With that, let me pass it over to Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who is helping pull Democrats together to lead the charge against Donald Trump and for American families. Take it away, Leader.
Well, thank you so much, Ken. Really appreciate your leadership, the fact that you have hit the ground running. We need a strong Democratic Party for the good of our country to preserve the American way of life, and you are leading the effort in that regard. We've got a lot of important battles in front of us. This is a very challenging time. Everything we care about in the United States of America is under assault. The economy is under assault. The safety net is under assault. Our very way of life as Americans is under assault. And of course, our democracy is under assault. We recognize the urgency of the moment, and we look forward to partnering with all of you out there throughout the country in order to get this situation turned around. We have an all-star group of House Democrats who have joined us today so we can answer the questions that you have about what's happening, what are we doing to stop the extremism, and how do we get the country to a better place. Let me first say to you all that we have a plan, and we understand that we need to execute it with the fierce urgency of now. 3 core elements. We have to defeat them legislatively and stop the implementation of their Extreme Project 2025 agenda. We have to defeat them in the courts. And we are winning case after case after case. Donald Trump is losing in court, including now twice at the Supreme Court. And then we have to, of course, win the hearts and minds of the American people so we can win back the House in 2026, cut Donald Trump's presidency in half legislatively, and begin the process of ending this national nightmare so we can make sure that the American dream is alive and well in every single community. We have to win the battle legislatively. We have to win the battle in courts. And then we have to win the battle for the hearts and minds of the American people so we can win back control of the House of Representatives next year. And we're only 3 seats short. We have the Republicans on the run on 3 core issues. They are on the run in terms of the economy. In fact, Donald Trump and Republicans are crashing the economy in real time. Donald Trump gave one of the most divisive speeches by a president in American history. 100 minutes and he barely spent any time on the economy. Why? Because it's collapsing on his watch. They made promises with respect to lowering costs. Costs aren't going down. They're going up. Inflation is going up. You know what's coming down? Donald Trump's poll numbers. Because he is mismanaging the economy and the American people are feeling it. And we're just at the 45-day mark. We have them on the run in terms of health care, particularly as it relates to Medicaid. House Democrats stand on the side of Medicaid and the American people. Republicans are trying to enact the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. And we need to keep the pressure on them legislatively and in communities all across the country. And partnering with you, we will be able to continue to do that. And we have them on the run with respect to the GOP tax scam, where they want to cut Medicaid, cut nutritional assistance for children and families, cut veterans benefits, and potentially cut Social Security benefits by trying to decimate the Social Security Administration. We have to continue to call them out on their extremism. We will do that. And all of that is being done in service of trying to pass massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors like Elon Musk and wealthy corporations. So we have them on the run, and we're going to keep our foot on the gas pedal. We've been joined by some tremendous members. I'll acknowledge them in seniority order. We, of course, have Jamie Raskin, the constitutional scholar, the champion for justice, the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, the lead impeachment manager in the second impeachment trial. We have Assistant Democratic Leader Joe Neguse, who's heading up our Rapid Response Task Force and our Litigation Working Group, which we've stood up for the first time ever to meet this moment. We have Lori Trahan from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a tremendous leader, one of the co-chairs of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, doing some incredible, innovative work as it relates to how House Democrats are communicating with the American people, recognizing that we have to go beyond traditional media and lean in to new media opportunities. And Lori will be able to speak to you about those efforts. We have Nikki Budzinski, Teresa Ledger Fernandez. I got to make sure I go in seniority order. Teresa came in 2020. She is the chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus, a great representative from the state of New Mexico, who is an incredible voice and an incredible lawyer as well. Nikki Budzinski, who represents and flipped a Republican-held district in 2022, and then decisively won re-election in 2024, and is a champion for organized labor and for working families. And last but certainly not least, Derek Tran, a new member of Congress who defeated an extreme MAGA Republican in 2024, helped us flip one of 10 Republican-held seats that we flipped in 2024, despite an unexpectedly adverse national environment. Derek also served this country in the Army and now is serving his community and this country in the U.S. House of Representatives. So we're excited about this opportunity to engage with all of you, and we will continue that engagement every day, every week, every month, throughout the year, into next year, as we work to get this situation turned around. So let's jump right in, because we got a lot of questions that we are going to try to get answered in the time that we have. James from North Carolina asks, as a retired federal employee and disabled veteran, I am concerned about cuts to the VA and Social Security Administration benefits. What are Democrats going to do to stop this from occurring? Great question. I want to go to Derek Tran, who is the first Vietnamese American ever elected from the Little Saigon community out in Southern California, served this country, is a veteran, and is on the front lines of this battle. Take it away, Derek.
Thank you so much, Leader Jeffries. Thank you, Chair Martin, for both of your leadership. James, first off, I want to say my sincere thank you for your service. You know, I am a proud veteran myself. I enlisted in the Army when I was 18. That's because I wanted to give back to the country that opened its arms to my refugee parents. I serve alongside so many men and women who poured their hearts into serving this country. The damning truth is that Donald Trump doesn't respect the brave Americans like you who made the ultimate sacrifice. He simply thinks we're suckers and losers. Donald Trump is firing more veterans than any president in American history. Let's let that sink in. Yesterday, his top advisor even admitted his administration thinks veterans are not fit to serve in the federal government after firing thousands of vets. Now, he's enacting dangerous agenda, a very dangerous agenda, in putting veterans' hard-earned benefits on the line by coming after your healthcare, your access to critical social safety net programs like Medicaid and Social Security, and getting and even gutting the VA. This is so shameful. Democrats will never forget the debt we owe to the men and women who have bravely served this country. We will hold Donald Trump and Republicans accountable for their shameful attacks on our nation's veterans. That's why last week I introduced the Protect Veterans Jobs Act to immediately reinstate the veterans who have been recklessly fired from civil service without any cause from this administration. More than 30% of our federal workforce is powered by veterans who work day in and day out to deliver services to families and service members. Whether our vets are working to ensure VA benefits go out in time, applying their cybersecurity expertise to keep us safe, or ensuring loans go out to small businesses, our country depends on our veterans. This past week, my colleagues and I have heard heartbreaking stories from veterans who have lost their jobs because of Trump and Elon Musk. They are worried they are no longer have the access to reliable health care. They are worried that they no longer can take care of their families. They are fearful that they will end up homeless. This is no way to treat our veterans, and Democrats will not stand for this. We will fight back, do everything we can to protect our veterans. Mr. Leader, I turn this back to you. Thank you for your question, James.
Derek, for your leadership, for introducing that legislation. And understand that the margins right now in the House, Republicans have the narrowest majority of any party, 218 to 214 at this moment, narrowest majority of any party since the Great Depression, which means that on any given issue, it only takes 3 Republicans to do the right thing for us to have a governing majority to get good things over the finish line and stop bad things from happening. We only need 3. They're flooding the zone with outrage. We're going to flood the zone with legislation, and we're going to continue to sue the heck out of them, and we'll hear more about that a little later on. Let me go next to a question from Charles from Tennessee, who asks, how will Democrats convince working class voters they can address core pocketbook economic issues to improve their well-being? And what is our message? What actions can be taken to address grocery prices, healthcare costs, daycare costs, housing costs, and inequitable taxes? Thank you so much for that question. I'm going to go to Nikki Baczynski, who, as I mentioned, flipped a Republican-held district in 2022. It's a working class district in Southern Illinois. And Nikki's on the ground, represents working class Americans, was reelected decisively, and has a lot of insight to offer. Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you so much, Leader. It's great to be with everybody tonight. One of the things I want to point out is before I had the honor of getting elected to Congress, I worked in the labor movement. I myself am actually a union dues paying member. And so I bring some of that perspective every day to the work that we do as House Democrats into Congress. I want to reflect a little bit on the November 2024 election and be very clear. I think Donald Trump made a compelling case that connected with working class voters. He sold to the American people that he was really going to actually tackle affordability. And us as Democrats, we kind of came at working class voters with a lot of facts and figures that we did have on our side, talking about GDP growth, talking about job creation. And we were working really hard to try to convince working class voters of something that they just didn't feel, which is that they were getting ahead. And so I think we have an opportunity, and we're really leading, I think, as House Democrats, as a Democratic Party right now, and reconnecting with working class voters. I like to talk about this in my district as these are the issues that wake people up at night. These are the issues when they're thinking about how they're going to pay for their heating bill. How are they going to afford childcare and dropping their child off at a childcare facility so that they themselves can get to work? How are they making those critical decisions between filling up their gas tank or being able to get groceries to provide for their families that evening? These are the kind of really tough decisions that working people are making every day in this country. And I will argue that these are the issues that it's Democrats, not Donald Trump and the Republican Party, that have a real agenda to address. I think one of the things as Democrats, though, we also need to be doing is showing up in these communities, showing up in communities that sometimes I can say in my district, some of these counties that were once blue that are now red, we need to go into these counties and make the case as to what the Democrats stand for and draw that powerful contrast for working class voters on what Donald Trump is standing for. And we can really, I think, do a very good job of drawing that contrast between us and them and reconnect with these voters that are going to help us win in these next elections. When we're talking about working class issues, these are the issues that Democrats are leading on. Fixing our broken child care system so that folks can afford and not have to make the difficult decision of whether they're going to be able to go to work that day, but actually drop their child off at a quality child care facility. And also know that that provider, that child care provider, they themselves are making a good wage with good benefits. That's what Democrats believe we should be tackling, and we are the party with the power and the programming to really address those issues. Democrats believe that it shouldn't be just a 4-year college degree that is a pathway to a good middle class living. You can get into a union apprenticeship program, or maybe you decide to go into a technical skills trade and get skilled up so that you can get into a good paying job in your community that might not require that 4-year degree. It's Democrats that believe and support union apprenticeship programs and non-traditional 4-year college pathways to good paying middle class jobs. It's Democrats that are really leading on issues around affordable housing, bringing down the cost of rent for folks, helping people become first-time homeowners. Those are the issues that working people really aspire to and also struggle with every day. And it's Democrats that are tackling affordable housing and have plans to move the ball forward on that critical issue. I also want to say, as someone that I said at the top that's a proud union member, we are the party that believes in the labor movement. We are the party that understands it was the labor movement that helped build the middle class in this country and is fighting alongside with Democrats to protect the middle class still today. We believe that workers should have a right to have a voice in their workplace, whether it is regarding safe working conditions or good wages, good benefits, Those are the issues that unions and the labor movement fight for, and Democrats are their partner in making sure that workers have that voice in the workplace. I'd also like to say a retirement with dignity. That's something that all working people aspire to at the end of the day, that they're going to have the benefit that they so rightfully earned and paid into in our Social Security system. And that's what Democrats are fighting up against Republicans that might like to cut or increase the eligibility age for Social Security. Democrats are standing up to fight against that and standing up for working families. I think we have an incredibly powerful opportunity right now, as I said at the beginning, to draw a contrast between these issues that I just talked about that Democrats are fighting for, leading on for working families, and what Donald Trump, House and Senate Republicans stand for. As I said at the beginning, too, I said Donald Trump connected with working class voters. We can admit that in the 2024 election. He told them he was going to address affordability, but I can tell you he has not done a single thing to address affordability for working people, to help bring down costs for working people since he took office. And in fact, what he has actually suggested is applying tariffs that are going to almost guarantee that costs are going to go up, not make things more affordable. As House Democrats, we were unified in voting against a budget proposal that would also hurt working people, cutting up to $880 billion for Medicaid and up to $230 billion of SNAP cuts. And I want to take a moment as someone that serves on the House Agriculture Committee to say that folks that are on SNAP are working people. You have to be working to become eligible for SNAP. SNAP benefits only equate to about $6 a day for working people. That's what Republicans want to take out of the hands of working people, and that's what Democrats are standing up against. I think that's a powerful message. And these cuts, which equate to almost over $1 trillion, what Donald Trump wants to do is give more tax cuts to corporations and his billionaire friends like Elon Musk. Donald Trump has made no secret about the fact that he would like to reduce the corporate tax rate from the already incredibly low 21% down to 15% and have working people pay for that. We can connect with working class voters when we talk about these issues, these pocketbook issues, and what this means to them. So I would just say, in short, we do have the issues on our side. These are issues that Democrats have been leading on for many years. And when we take back the House majority and we make Leader Jeffries, Speaker Jeffries, we're going to have legislation to get things done again for working people and stop having to play defense. But one of the things we have to do to reconnect with some of these voters is show up in their communities, listen, and meet them where they are. And I think at that point, we're going to be able to get back to winning working class voters in this next election. Thank you, Leader Jeffries.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And we are going to relentlessly communicate, as Nikki has indicated, to working class voters all across America, meet them where they are, and connect with them with a very simple message. We hear you. We know that the deck has been stacked against you for far too long. The cost of living is too high. Far too many Americans are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. That should not happen in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. That's an outrage. We hear you, we see you. We're going to make life better for you. That is the House Democratic commitment. Thank you so much, Nikki. Next is a question from Stephanie from Massachusetts, who asks, what's going to happen to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act? Let me go to Teresa Leger Fernandez. We call her affectionately TLF, from the great state of New Mexico, who's the champion on this issue.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for asking that question, because it is key to understand the fear and worry across America, and especially for women. Listen, last night Trump said he thinks this is a golden age. But the reality, only the rich can dream in Trump's America. For the rest of us, Americans are living a nightmare. And last night, he never once mentioned healthcare or their plans to gut Medicaid, because Republicans, even though they passed that $880 billion cut that'll hit Medicaid, they keep denying it. They are hiding their plans. But we know it's going to hit women especially hard. So what we're going to do is keep bringing the stories of what Republicans' plans will do. 40% of moms in America giving birth rely on Medicaid. The number is even higher in rural areas. Our grandmothers and parents in nursing homes rely on Medicaid to pay their health bills. Their caregivers, who are mostly women, depend on Medicaid themselves. Children, about half of our children rely on Medicaid and CHIP. And the thing about this is they live in every state. They come from every background. They don't pay attention to whether they're Democrat or the Republican. But we are paying attention to the pain that would happen to them if Republican ripoff, if their $880 billion were to actually happen. So, there was different ways in which we are addressing that real concern. Last week, I did a press conference at the El Centro Family Health Clinic in rural New Mexico. It's one of those federally qualified health centers where nearly half of the patients rely on Medicaid. It's going to be devastated. And you know what? Many of the clinics like El Centro are in Republican areas, in Pennsylvania, in Texas, in Iowa. And we are going to make sure that the voters in those areas know what's going to happen to the clinics that they love. So while it's really, really scary right now, Stephanie, I also want to remind everybody about this. Donald Trump tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act numerous times over and over again, and he failed because the American people, led by Democrats, stood up and said, hell no, not just no, hell no. And you know what, right now, women are passionate, we're powerful, we're persistent, and we are pissed off. And we're going to show up and raise these issues. And we know it takes just 3 Republicans to stop Donald Trump from cutting Medicaid. Last night, every Republican was on their feet, cheering on Trump's lies and delusions. They all stood for Elon Musk rather than stand with their voters, their mothers, their grandmothers. Speaker Johnson has told them, don't hold town halls. But you know what? The voters don't have to obey Speaker Johnson. Remember, Representative Lawler, 300 people showed up and said, you must speak to us. And Republicans know that their voters don't want Medicaid cut. They don't want the Affordable Care Act cut. So we're going to keep the pressure on them. As the leader said, they want to flood the zone. Well, we're going to flood the phones. So you know what? Figure out how to hold your own town hall. Figure out how to reach out to the health clinics, the hospitals in your areas. Make sure that your voices are known, because we got to keep that pressure on. And we are going to succeed because we have to, for the health of the babies. Thank you so very much, Leader Jeffries.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And as you said, failure is not an option. We recognize that. The stakes are too high. Every single House Democrat voted no on the reckless Republican budget that included the largest possible cut to Medicaid in American history. That was just the beginning of the process. Had just one additional Republican voted with us, we could have stopped that bill initially in its tracks, and that effort is ongoing. And we should have hope that we can do it. Remember, when Donald Trump took office in 2017, there were 241 Republicans in the House, only 194 Democrats. We were buried deep in the minority. And yet, because the American people rose up, we were able to stop the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. This time around, as I mentioned, the numbers are 218 to 214 currently, which means it only takes a handful of House Republicans to stand with the American people, which they will only do if they are under pressure from their constituents And we see that activity ongoing all across America. It only takes a handful, less than 5. We only need 3 to stand with the American people, and we can stop them from cutting Medicaid and devastating the Affordable Care Act, just like we stopped them in 2017 when the odds were much higher in their favor. We're going to go next to Sabine, who I believe is from Connecticut. She has a question that is on the mind of a lot of people. We've been getting a lot of questions about you-know-who, the unelected, out-of-control billionaire puppet master of the Republican Party, Elon Musk. And so Sabine asks, why does Musk have or need access to my Social Security number? A related question from Karen from New Hampshire is, can we stop Musk? He is not an elected official exactly. He's an unelected billionaire bureaucrat. I'm going to go to Jamie Raskin, who is leading the charge in this effort, our constitutional scholar extraordinaire.
Hakeem, thanks so much, man. It's great to be with you and with Teresa and Nikki. I don't know if Derek is still around, but thank you all for what you're doing. I see my colleagues working straight through the weekend, every week, straight through the night often, and it is an honor to be working with you and with Ken Martin in this fight. Look, those are great questions from Sabine and from Karen. Let's start with this. Does Elon Musk need your Social Security number, your tax information, your health, Medicare, Medicaid information, your education, college loan information, immigration, all this? Does he need that? No, absolutely. He does not need it. If his job is theoretically, putatively, allegedly to fight waste, fraud, and abuse. Look at the people who really fight waste, fraud, and abuse. The inspectors general of the United States, and they're all embedded in different federal departments and agencies. They don't take access to any of that information. And they show up not with a bunch of computer hackers and, juvenile racist ideologues. They show up with forensic accountants, economists, budgetary accountants. Okay, that's who they show up with. And through their painstaking work, just last year, they saved us for real $91 billion. And they've got staffs of dozens and dozens of people or hundreds of people. Now, Elon Musk shows up and he wants to take over everybody's computer data. What does it have to do with waste, fraud, and abuse? Nothing, which is why it's very clear they've done nothing in terms of advancing the fight against waste, fraud, and abuse. In fact, what they've done is they've sacked 18 inspectors general who were the real corruption, fraud, waste, abuse fighters in the government. So they don't need your Social Security information or your IRS information or any of the other stuff they wanted to get access to. They want that information. Now, why they want it is an interesting question. We don't have time to explore all the theories, but let me just quickly state, he has some clear private business motives for wanting to get a hold of everybody's data. He is into the artificial intelligence business. He's got his own AI program called Grok, and they want to train it. They want to feed it with everybody's information. He's also in the business of trying to create the country's premier financial services and financial payment company. He wants to turn X into a way that you will be able to pay off your credit card bills and transfer money and so on. So this is very useful information for that on the private side. On the public side, there's no better authority to consult here than George Orwell, who understood that knowledge is power, and knowledge through surveillance of the population is total power. If they can get total power over everybody, that can be used for 1,000 purposes that you can think of in terms of threatening people, having political leverage over people. They'd have information on judges, prosecutors, members of Congress, journalists, business opponents, you name it, people who work in the government. They would love to have all of that for political reasons. Now, do they have a right to get any of it? No. There's something called the Privacy Act of 1986. And the Privacy Act says that all of the data about you that the government has can only be used for legally prescribed and authorized purposes and may not be leaked out or used for any other purposes. It can be used for routine agency use, but that's it. And so we don't even know what DOJ wants it for, but they're coming in with their servers and they started to download information at the Department of the Treasury, and they had everybody's internal revenue information and so on. Federal District Court Judge Paul Engelmeyer in the Southern District of New York entered an injunction on February 8th forbidding any other access of DOJ to the Treasury systems. Now, Judge Engelmeyer asked them, did they account for the security of the data that had already been accessed by Elon Musk's computer hackers who came in with DOJ? And the answer was they didn't know whether any of the information was diverted to other purposes. We know they showed up with their own servers. We also know from representations to the court that there were tons of email that were going out, but they were not able to tell whether or not there were breaches in everybody's data in those emails. So the answer to that is uncertain. We don't know what we've lost so far, but Judge Engelmeyer came down real hard. That temporary restraining order was reaffirmed by a preliminary injunction by a federal judge in the Southern District, and it's been upheld as well in the Second Circuit. So right now, that is frozen, which is good, and we're winning in court on that, and we're trying to make sure that we're winning also in the other federal departments and agencies, because we don't want them seizing people's data through the Department of Labor or through OMB or through the Agency for International Development or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, where there's litigation going on over the same thing. So we're fighting on every front to try to protect everybody's private data. Now, let me just say one final thing. I'll turn it back to you, Hakeem. Look, there's a couple other laws I just want to mention. One is called the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986, which makes breaching the computers of the government of the United States a crime, and there's also a private right of action built into that statute that could lend itself to a nationwide class action suit if we indeed find out our data has leaked out or been diverted for any purpose, unauthorized purpose, private or public purpose. And the final thing I want to mention is this, the Freedom of Information Act. Now, the Freedom of Information Act gives us, in our democracy, the right to find out from the government what is the state of the information the government has about us on everything from our college student loans to our foreign travel to our health care through Medicaid and Medicare, Social Security, IRS. We have a right to find out what is the security of our data and has it been used for any other purpose. So I'm planning this week to write in myself. I'm going to put up online exactly how I'm writing and the form I'm using to find out whether my data has been compromised. But every U.S. citizen has a right to file a FOIA request of DOJ because they are now asserting and they're pleading in court that it is part of the federal government, although they disavow that Elon Musk is the leader of DOJ. They say he's not running DOJ. We don't know exactly what he is. We think they're keeping him in that special government employee category so he can continue to run his multi-billion dollar businesses on the side. But he's got a very striking and overwhelming conflict of interest, both being an employee overseeing all of this information he's trying to get a hold of and government contracts, while he is a leading government contractor who's gotten tens of billions of dollars from the U.S. taxpayer. So let's find out about our own data and let's try to restore government to the people. As Hakeem Jeffries was saying, let's get our democracy back from this billionaire cabinet and from the plutocrats and the theocrats and the autocrats and the oligarchs. Let's get back to good old-fashioned American democracy. I yield back to you, Hakeem.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And I just want to ask you a quick question because I know this has been on the minds of a lot of folks, and no one better to answer it than you. And you are helping to lead our litigation working group effort, the all hands on deck effort to make sure that we are unleashing everything that we have in terms of winning in Congress, winning in court, winning in the community, in terms of the hearts and minds of the American people. But in terms of this court fight, is Donald Trump winning or losing? More than 100 different lawsuits have been filed related to at least 35 or 40 of these unlawful and unconstitutional executive orders and administrative actions. They've unleashed, they're flooding the zone in terms of the outrage. We're flooding the zone in terms of righteous litigation. And the question is, that I know is on the minds of, are we winning in court or are we losing?
Oh, we're winning big time, Hakeem. We have now more than 35 temporary restraining orders that were granted immediately, like Judge Engelmeyer in New York, and then they become preliminary injunctions when there's a fuller hearing of the case. And we've started to win now in substantive trial litigation. In fact, it's gotten so bad for them, they're losing with judges who were appointed under Obama, under Bush, under Trump himself. We had a Reagan judge who struck down their executive order trying to nullify the first sentence of the 14th Amendment, which says that all persons who are born in the United States or naturalized here and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. And they just tried to destroy that. We've had 5 judges strike it down, including a Reagan judge who'd said he'd never seen an easier case in his entire career. Another one said, you don't have to know how to, you don't have to be a lawyer to understand how wrong this is. You just have to know how to read. So they are absolutely getting slaughtered in court to the point where all we did in the Judiciary Committee today, Hakeem, was they were bringing forth cases trying to strip jurisdiction away from the courts. For example, one of them said they wanted to end nationwide injunctions. So you couldn't have nationwide constitutional rulings. It's like if in Brown versus Board of Education, the court had said, our ruling desegregating the schools applies only to Linda Brown and the handful of other plaintiffs who came in. That's right after, of course, during the Biden administration, when they all made their holy trek down to that Judge Kaczmarek in Texas to try to get him to enter nationwide injunctions on things like women's access to birth control and abortion and so on. So they believed in nationwide injunctions then, but suddenly they don't believe in it now and they want to try to get rid of it. They're trying to pack the courts again, but they understand that the courts right now and the people who are flooding the courts and the lawyers, the brave lawyers who are standing up, because I got to tell you, a lot of law firms are afraid of Trump, but the brave ones are coming forward to help us out. And these people are the bulwark right now against the steamroller of authoritarianism that Trump and Musk have unleashed on us.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie. You're always on the case, and you're going to continue to kind of lead us forward as the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee. No better person to lead us on judiciary at this moment than you. And there have been 2 cases that have gotten to the Supreme Court. The American people, 2, Donald Trump, 0. I know everybody's worried about the Supreme Court. Understand that the law is so strongly on our side that the 2 cases that have reached the Supreme Court, one related to USAID and the other related to the Office of Special Counsel, we've won both of them at this point. And
if I could add one final thing, Hakeem, it's great that we're winning on the Office of Special Counsel case for the director of the Office of Special Counsel, Hampton Dellinger, because within his office, we are also winning on behalf of the so-called probationary federal workers. And they're on probation, not because they did something delinquent or bad. They're on probation because either they were just hired or they've just been promoted because of their excellence. And that was my guest to the speech last night. It was an NIH child cancer researcher who was on probation because she'd just been promoted because of her superior work in making progress on research on childhood cancer, and they just sacked her with 1 week to go before she would have become a permanent employee. It's just scandalous and sickening what's going on. And then he gets up on the stage and talks about how one of their top priorities is to fight childhood cancer.
Thank you so much, Jamie Raskin, Let me go next to a question from Joseph. I think we can get two more questions in before the top of the hour. We've got Joseph from South Carolina who asked a question that I think is on the minds of a lot of different folks. How will Democrats get their message out to the public using non-traditional sources outside of major news and TV outlets? No one better prepared to answer that question than Lori Trahan, who is one of the co-chairs of our Communications and Policy Committee. Take it away, Lori.
Well, thank you, Leader Jeffries, and thank you, Joseph, from South Carolina for that question, and also Chair Martin for hosting this important event. Let me just say that I am filled with hope because Democrats across the country are energized, back in the fight, ready to take on an administration and a Republican-controlled Congress that are hell-bent on overplaying their hand, pushing an agenda that is completely out of step with what the American people want and need. I have no doubt that we can win back the House in 2 years and the White House 2 years after that. But doing so requires a fundamental shift in how we communicate our message and where we meet our voters. It's no secret that our party is at an inflection point. In the minority, our job is twofold. We must call out the harm that the Trump-Musk-Vance administration is causing in every one of our communities. But we also have to present our own authentic, positive vision for the future and make sure that we're reaching people where they are. In today's, fast-moving digital landscape, Democrats can't afford to rely solely on legacy media like cable news to tell our story. Simply hitting send on a press release is not an effective communication strategy. While traditional outlets still play a major role, voters, especially young and diverse audiences, are increasingly turning to political and lifestyle influencers for authentic, unfiltered perspectives on the issues that shape their lives. By cultivating relationships with these influencers, Democrats can break through the noise. We can connect with voters in meaningful ways and shape the conversation on platforms that drive culture and engagement. So that means engaging in policy discussions on national podcasts, but it also showing up on local and regional podcasts and mediums that serve specific communities. It means collaborating with creators who make politics accessible to niche audiences, whether that's through sports, fashion, gaming, or other interests beyond traditional politics. This isn't just about messaging. This is about rebuilding trust and creating a movement that feels personal, relatable, and real so that our message is better received in the first place. The future of political engagement is digital, it's decentralized, and it's driven by authenticity. If Democrats want to win hearts and minds and elections, we must embrace that reality. Now, I don't have to tell any of you, voters can spot inauthentic, canned talking points from a mile away. We need to get comfortable speaking from the heart. And yes, that means taking risks and sometimes making mistakes. If we're overly cautious, we'll struggle to build the authenticity that voters crave. At the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, we're working really hard every day to equip members and their teams with the resources and the tools that they need to meet this moment head on. Just yesterday, before and after President Trump's speech to Congress, the DPCC hosted 3 separate such engagements. At our media row with TV stations reaching our local media markets, we welcomed well over 100 of our colleagues. At Leader Jeffries' open house before the speech, we convened over 125 members and 34 digital creators. These included podcasters, YouTubers, and new media journalists from Crooked Media and Midas Touch and many others. After the address, we turned the open house into a spin room, and dozens of members came back down to speak to the creators about what they heard in Trump's address. Now, we are still crunching the numbers on total reach for the creators, but it was clearly in the millions. More than 840,000 people watched a single YouTube live stream that the leader participated in. House Democrats were focused on Trump's empty and broken promises, not his menial sideshows or his pageantry. And we're going to keep this up. So I want to thank you for the question, Joseph, and I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I'm grateful to stand with all of you in this fight.
So much. Lori, you're doing a tremendous job in this space, along with Debbie Dingle, Maxwell Frost, and Lauren Underwood, who are leading the charge for us in terms of our communications. And of course, we're going to focus on local media, which is important, local radio, local TV, local print on the ground, as well as new media, as Lori has indicated. And we have gotten some updated numbers from our unprecedented engagement with social media influencers and podcasters and YouTubers and those who are in the digital space. About 30 million people or so watched the state, or the so-called joint address to Congress, I should say, yesterday. And in terms of the digital engagement that we've been able to track so far, more than 100 members of Congress in total engaging with these social media influencers, and the content that was created around the joint address to Congress and the Democratic rebuttal and response, 35 million views. 35 million views, actually exceeded the number of people who watched the speech, and we're just getting started. Thank you, Lori.
You bet.
For your tremendous work. Last question, and then we're going to go to Ken Martin for some concluding thoughts and a call to action. A number of individuals wrote in asking about what Democrats are doing to fight back. For example, Michelle, of course, she's from Washington, I believe. What plans do Democrats have to be bold, loud, and creatively disruptive? That's a great question. Thank you so much. Let me go to our assistant Democratic leader, an impeachment manager during the second impeachment trial, and the leader, I appointed him as the chair of the Democratic Rapid Response Task Force and Litigation Working Group, alongside with Jamie and Rosa DeLauro and Jerry Conley. Jonah Goose.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Leader Jeffries, for your leadership, and grateful for the responsibility of leading the task force and the litigation working group. And Michelle, I really appreciate your question, which is such a salient one, particularly in a moment like this, that we all recognize is a perilous one for our republic. Leader Jeffries has spoken eloquently about the fact that this really is an all hands on deck moment for all of us collectively, the House Democratic Caucus and American citizens from coast to coast. And that's precisely why the task force and the litigation working group is so important. Now, I couldn't say it any better than the members who have spoken this evening in terms of how we are being bold and innovative in our response. You heard from Lori with respect to the messaging work that we are doing in terms of accessing both and leveraging both legacy media and new digital media, flooding the zone. You have seen many of our members now going on Fox News and some of the more conservative outlets so that we can reach each and every American citizen about the unlawful and unconstitutional nature of what President Trump is pursuing here in Washington, D.C. We're being bold with respect to the litigation strategy. You heard Leader Jeffries and, of course, Ranking Member Raskin describe the ways in which we are engaged in the litigation fight. Being bold means sometimes taking unprecedented steps. And that's exactly what House Democrats did just a few days ago when 203 House Democrats joined an amicus brief in support of our effort to keep the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau alive and to prevent Donald Trump from dismantling this agency that protects everyday working families across our country. Unprecedented for House Democrats to get involved at the trial court level, but that's exactly what we did because we recognize that this moment calls for us to take bold action. Bold with respect to the legislative solutions that we have proposed. And as the leader has repeatedly stated, we only need 3 House Republicans to join our efforts to stop the madness and ultimately prevent the unlawful nature of these agency actions that the Trump administration is pursuing. For me, Leader Jeffries, and I think this is an important point for you, Michelle, and for all the folks across the country who are tuning in tonight. A part of being bold also means soliciting your feedback and engaging each and every one of you as we work together to protect our democracy. The task force, the litigation working group wants to hear from you. We welcome your feedback, your suggestions, your ideas about the legislative oversight and litigation tools that we should use and deploy to ultimately push back. One thing I can assure you of is that we will continue to be bold in our approach as we begin to take our show on the road. We know that Republican members are refusing to hold town halls in their districts because they are scared of their constituencies. They recognize the outrage and the fear that so many Americans are experiencing, which is why House Democrats will be across the country making the case to voters directly about the road that we need to take together at this point in time. So we welcome your feedback, we welcome your suggestions, and please know that we'll continue to vindicate the rights of every single American citizen, to vindicate the Constitution every single day of the week.
So much, Joe. I want to thank all of the members. We're going to go to Ken Martin to close with a great summary question. I did want to say to everybody, though, follow these members on social media. It's the best way to stay connected to the things that we are doing to push back against the flood of extremism and outrage that is being unleashed on the American people. Follow all of them. Rep Joe Neguse. That's at Rep Joe Neguse. At Rep Raskin. At Rep Lori Trahan. At Rep Teresa LF. That stands for Ledger Fernandez, but we're going with the LF. At Teresa LF. At Nikki B. The B is for Buzinski, but you can follow her at Nikki, NIKKIB. And at Rep Derek Trahan CA. Stands for California, y'all. At Rep Derek Tran CA. Follow all of them, and you can follow me on any channel at Rep Jeffries. So as I hand it over to Ken, let me just say, the flood the zone strategy from Donald Trump is designed to convince all of you that he's winning. He's not winning. This thing is not inevitable. He's not invincible. And we are pushing back forcefully. He's losing in Congress. They haven't passed a single bill to cement their Project 2025 agenda through the House or through the Senate. Not a single bill. They're losing in court. They're not winning, and they're losing the battle for the hearts and minds of the American people. His poll numbers aren't going up. They're going down, including amongst people who voted for him. And we're going to continue to drive those numbers down. So we're thankful for all of you. This is the battle of our lifetime. Hardest thing that any of us have been called upon to do, but I'm convinced that we can do it together. We've got a final question that I think is a great question to end on. Chad from Pennsylvania asks, besides donations, and those are important, we've got to win the House back. But besides donations, what can the average person do to fight back against this administration? At the moment, I don't have the means to donate, but I don't want to sit on the sidelines feeling like I'm not doing anything. I want to get in the fight, but I don't know how. Any advice would be appreciated. Great question to end on. Thank you, Ken, for your tremendous leadership of the DNC. And as we say in the House, I yield to you to answer that question and to close us out.
Well, thank you, Leader Jeffries. And I want to thank all of your colleagues tonight for joining us. The ones on the phone, of course, on the Zoom call for spending our night together and making sure that the American people watching tonight know what Democrats are doing to fight back in this moment. I also want to thank all of your colleagues who weren't with us tonight. House Democrats are standing up and fighting back and making sure that the American people know exactly what's at stake. We've got 607 days until the upcoming election. That might seem like a lot of time, but as I always say to folks, there's three commodities in elections. It's people, it's money, and it's time. And so we can always raise a few more bucks. We can always, recruit a few more people. But the one thing we can't get back is time. And we have to use every single day we can right now, because the number one thing we can do to stop Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and of course, J.D. Vance is to win back the U.S. House majority, making Leader Jeffries Speaker Jeffries. And I'm 1,000% committed to doing that along with all of you. Look, there are a lot of races happening right now this year in 2025, including special elections, local seats, and some critical statewide bellwethers. And what I need you to do, every one of you at home to do right now, is to pull out your phones and text volunteer to 43367. Let me say that again. Text volunteer to 43367. Most immediately, we need support and volunteers in places like Florida and Wisconsin. We have to send a strong message to Republicans over the coming weeks. You can make calls, you can knock on doors, you can vote in special and off-year elections like the Wisconsin Supreme Court. I just traveled to Milwaukee just a couple weeks ago to knock doors and kick off a grassroots mobilization effort. Next thing I need you to do is run for office. There are 100,000 local races in this country on the ballot right now. Last midterm, 70% of all elections went uncontested, and Democrats were 3 times as likely to not run a candidate. We have to break the Republican control at the local and state level. We've given too much ground in state legislatures, county offices, local councils, school boards, mayoral, and more. If you want to run, let me know. We will help you. I'll show up and door knock for you. Third, join your local Democratic Party. If you're not ready to run for office, you can still sign up to be part of our party and grow us from the inside out. This is absolutely critical. So look, I just want to thank you all again. We can do this together. As Leader Jeffries said, we're going to win again for the American people. Have a great evening and take care.